It's okay, thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All praises are Allah's, Lord of the worlds, and may His peace and blessings be upon our Master, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, and his pure immaculate Ahlul Bayt. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal. Ash-Shari'atu aqwali wa Tariqatu af'ali wal Haqiqatu ahwali. This is a prophetic tradition which is very popular and has a lot of significance attached to it, especially for people who are wary and attach importance to traveling the spiritual route to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obedience to the Holy Prophet takes many different dimensions to it. In this tradition, 3 dimensions, albeit very broadly delineated, are discussed. The first is the words of the Holy Prophet, the letter of the law, the Shariah. The wajibat, the obligatory actions that the Holy Prophet spoke about, the sins that the Holy Prophet has mentioned. In this of Islam, Islam is one reality, but this has its own capacity. But the first step, which is the most essential step, the letter of the law. You can't do without it. If you imagine 100 steps to Allah, you have to go through step 1. Step 1 is the letter of the law. It's the Shariah. To put it simply, it's doing the wajibat, refraining from the muharramat. And this is important. The problem, however, is this, that some people confine Islam to the letter of the law. And that can be problematic. Islam is a multi-dimensional truth. It has many layers to it. When you confine Islam to the letter of the law, you are in effect limiting yourself and therefore wasting the soul in its potential, and that's reaching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One trap that many people fall into is that they look at the letter of the law and they become oblivious to any of its inner dimensions. For example, they do the wudu, the ghusl and the salat on a par with the letter of the law, without making an endeavor to see what are does the ghusl, does the wudu, does the salat have any esoteric dimensions to it? Or is it the mere physical action which is important? Some people confine it to the physical movements and actions. These people will suffer eventually. And it's not something that difficult to appreciate. You may see many people, they do all the wajibat, they refrain from all the muharramat, the sins, but they don't know how to speak with their husbands or their wives. They don't know how to speak with their children. They lie at the workplace. Oh, well, lying is haram. They don't lie, but they do many other unethical actions. They don't like, because lying is haram. They refrain from all the sins. But there are many actions which don't fall under the obligatory actions and the sins. For example, if someone is jealous and they don't express their jealousy, that's not a canonical sin. It's not a sin according to contact. Someone holds on to grudges, for example, sin according to the Shariah, but it contaminates the soul. You see, if you limit the letter of the law, you're missing the spirit of the law. Yarhamkumullah. The rituals that we have in the letter of the law can either be confined to those physical actions, and someone does one's utmost to realize those physical actions, or one can go deeper, looking into the philosophy and wisdoms behind those actions. One who goes deeper succeeds in religion. One who stays at the letter of the law, it's good. There may even be a heaven at the end of it, albeit a very basic type. But they've prevented themselves from a lot. I want to give an example of the wudu, the washing and the wiping of certain parts of the body. Sometimes that's all that people look at, the washing, and you see them washing a lot, and they really focus very much on the physical aspects of the washing, which is important up to a limit, but they go overboard. Because the aim there is only that physical washing or the physical wiping. That's all that bothers them. However, they don't look into the inner meanings of the wudu. And if they don't go into the inner meanings of wudu, they lose the plot. They'll never reach the objective. Because all rituals in the Shariah have underlying rationale behind them and wisdoms behind them, all of it being traced back to one thing, and that's recalling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything in the Shariah. Now, if you take the Shariah minus those esoteric wisdoms, it will be a very dry religion that you're practicing. Albeit acceptable from you, and albeit good to some degree. But you wouldn't have grown. And that's why you see many people, they do all the wajibat, refrain from the sins, but they're not very ethical people. They're not very spiritual people. Then you keep on looking at the wudu, only that physical washing and the limits and everything, and then the child asks you a question. Or you teach the child the ghusl, for example, or the wudu in this manner, that manner, then the child asks a question. They say that, well, we can have a shower, it'll be much cleaner than washing ourselves like that. And then you have no answer now, you see. It's a problem here. The children today, they're not like the children in the East of 20, 30, 40 years ago. People would do what they were told. The system in America, and it's not a bad system, but they teach the children to question everything, evaluate everything, criticize everything until you get to the bottom of something, and that's good. But if the scholars don't pay attention to these questions and dilemmas that the children have, it's going to be a problem. Not that the children were at fault. We were at fault of accepting religion blindly to some degree. The children, it's impossible, those who were brought up in America, to accept anything blindly. And if they succeed, they'll be much stronger than we were. But most of them don't, because they don't have the answers. And that's the fault of people like me. They say, okay, we can take a shower, it's guaranteed, it's much more cleaner and tidier than your ghusl or your wudu. You keep on saying, Allah said, but they have a rationality, they're thinking about this. But since you just look at the letter of the law, you never bothered to go through the wisdoms of the different rituals in Islam, you can't explain anything now to your children. They just have to believe like you did, but they can't. They were brought up here. Now, I just want to go through the one hadith in relation to the wudu. It's a very important hadith. And then you can ask yourselves, or make the correlation, if there is a correlation, that is this utmost benefit of wudu mentioned in this tradition, is it related at all to that physical washing? And the answer is no. Then we have to go and search for some answers. But I'll start off with the actual tradition. It's Hadith Qudsi. Hadith Qudsi means it's a sacred tradition. Being a sacred tradition means this, that when Allah speaks, not with a physical mouth or anything, and He reveals upon the Prophet His own words, that's we call the Quran. But sometimes Allah reveals a meaning to the Prophet, and that meaning the Prophet uses his own words to describe that meaning revealed upon the Prophet. It's a Prophet's words now, it's not God's words. That's called sacred traditions. So God is speaking, but the Prophet is using his own words here. In this tradition, Allah is saying. Now let me read the tradition one by one, then I'll go through it. Don't panic if it seems a bit difficult in the beginning. We'll go through it one by one. So Allah is saying, Man ahdatha wa lam yatawadda faqad jafani. You may have heard of this tradition, but there's some elements that you may have missed. Whoever becomes a muhdith is someone whose wudu has become nullified. They've slept, for example, or they've gone to the lavatory. Their wudu is now void. So one whose wudu has been nullified. وَلَمْ يَتَوَضَّأ, and they don't do a wudu after their wudu has become nullified. Allah says, فَقَدْ جَفَانِ, verily they have abandoned me. They've abandoned me, Allah. وَمَنْ أَحْدَثَ وَتَوَضَّأَ وَلَمْ يُصَلِّي رَكْعَتَيْنِ فَقَدْ جَفَانِ. But someone whose wudu has become void, and they do the wudu after that nullification of their wudu, but they don't pray 2 units of salat. Allah says, they've abandoned me. وَمَنْ أَحْدَثَ وَتَوَضَّأَ وَصَلَّى رَكْعَتَيْنِ وَلَمْ يَدْعُنِي فَقَدْ جَفَانِ. Someone whose wudu has become nullified, they do the wudu, they do the 2 units of salat after the wudu, but they don't supplicate before me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They've abandoned me. وَمَنْ أَحْدَثَ وَتَوَضَّأَ, but someone who's become muhdith, their wudu has become nullified, void. They do the wudu, وَصَلَّى رَكَعَتَيْنِ, they do the 2 units of prayer, like the 2 units of prayer we do in the morning, وَدَعَانِي, and they supplicate after the 2 units to me, Allah. وَلَمْ أَجِبْهُ فِي مَا سَأَلَنِي مِنْ أَمْرِ دِينِهِ وَدُنْيَا. So he does all that, and he does a supplication, and I, Allah, if I don't answer to what they are requesting, be it in matters of their religion or matters of the worldly life, if I don't answer, فَقَدْ جَفَوْتُهُ, I, Allah, have abandoned them. وَلَسْتُ بِرَبٍّ جَافٍ, and I'm not an abandoning Lord. You see, this is something incredible. That here Allah is saying, you just do these things, whatever you want in your religion, whatever you want in the worldly life, I will give, because I don't abandon people. Will Allah give all these things if you just look at the washing as a mere washing and the wiping as a mere wiping? Of course not. The wudu has to be much more deeper than this. It doesn't fit. The two, they don't correlate together. Merely washing and wiping does not lead to this spiritual benefit that Allah gives you whatever you want in the worldly life and in religious matters. So there has to be something more to wudu. Now for 70, 80 years of your life, you just look at the washing and focus on it. Eventually you'll acquire waswas. Many people have waswas. They keep on washing it. It's washed. To enter the domain of waswas, it's very difficult to come out. That's the satanic territory now. Only with Allah's help. In the wudu, every part of it. Now the wudu has a certain amount which is wajib to do. It has many mustahab parts to it too. But every part of the wudu, there are these meanings that you have to recall when you're doing the wudu. Imam Khomeini in his Adab al-Salat says, he refers to a book by Ibn Arabi, he says in that book, 150 different esoteric meanings of the wudu has been discussed. Now, naturally, we don't want everyone to do the 150, that's impossible, but you see, those inner meanings of the wudu is important to appreciate, to execute, to do these things. If you do those meanings, recall those meanings during every limb, yes, your spirituality will be growing. Every time you do wudu, you recall those meanings. 5 times a day. No, eventually you'll be growing. Now, I want to just describe one of those. One of the esoteric meanings of the wudu, and that's when we wash the arms from a bit higher than the elbow downwards. We keep on washing it downwards. This elbow joint is a very firm, which we depend upon during our lives a lot. In this world, everything is a cause. This microphone is there, this book, the car, food. These are different causes in this worldly realm of multiplicities that we face. In wudu, in this part of the wudu, this is what we're saying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, oh Allah, I am drowned in this world of causes, but you are the only cause. You are the sole cause, and I'm washing myself from all other causes because they're not real causes. Only you, Allah, are the real cause. Now what does that mean? You go to the grocery and get some food. You don't see the grocer as the person who's providing sustenance. You see, Allah is Ar-Raziq. He's the provider of sustenance. You thank the grocer, but you see, Allah is Raziq. You go to the doctor cures you, and you thank the doctor. The etiquette has to be there. But you don't see the doctor as Ash-Shafi. Allah is the curer. You see, you're washing yourself from everything but Allah. Only Allah is the cause. You put the alarm on your car. Allah is Hafid. You don't see the alarm as the preserver. You drink water. We see the water as quenching our thirst. But we have to see Allah is As-Saqi. And so on and so forth. In all these actions, we slowly and gradually fill our hearts with Allah and empty our hearts with other than Allah. لِرَجُلٍ assigned anyone two hearts inside one heart. You can't love Allah and love in this process. In wudu, look how important this is. It's training you for throughout the day. When the teacher teaches you, when your employer gives you money, Allah is the ultimate employer. Allah is the ultimate teacher. Slowly by slowly, with practice, you fill the heart with Allah whilst living in this world. There's nothing wrong with it. Being married, children, at the workplace, university, but the process of filling the heart with Allah. This wudu is recalling that process. That's just one meaning. But every component of the wudu, you have to learn these. There are Arabic formulae to memorize, but there's no need to memorize. Even I don't know them off by heart. The meaning. Whatever we have in Shariah, we call it. We shouldn't look at the Shariah as an ends in itself. It's a means to something. A means to recalling Allah. Aqim as-salah li dhikri. Do the salat, finish the salat to recall me, Allah subhanahu me. Everything in the Sharia is that. But if you just stick to the letter of the law, that physical dimension, minus the esoteric dimensions, you've wasted the soul. You're at loss. And the reason the salat, we have 5 salats which are wajib, because there has to be a minimum which is made wajib. If no salat was wajib, we'll all forget Allah. There was a minimum that Allah has assigned, and then we grow from that minimum. But the point is recalling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the ghusl, it's washing the whole body now. Why? There's a lot of delicate points here. So here we have to pay attention. We shouldn't confine Islam to the letter of the law. The letter of the law is the start. It's an essential start, and you can't grow without it. But we have to grow further and further through the Sharia. Okay. Next, at-tariqatu af'ali. The tariqah is my actions. What actions are these? These are the noble ethical traits. وَأَلَّوْ اسْتَقَامُوا عَلَى التَّرِيقَةِ. If they hold steadfast on the path, لَأَسْقَيْنَاهُمْ مَاءً غَدَقًا. We shall satiate them with abundant water. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, abundant water is divine knowledge. Sometimes water in the Quran is indicative of divine knowledge. You be steadfast on the Tariqah, you'll be granted, most definitely, La asqaynahum. Most certainly, you'll be given divine knowledge. Well, this Tariqah can't be a fiqhi Tariqah alone. Because you stick to the letter of the law, it's not guaranteed that you will be given divine knowledge. It's only a start. So this Tariqah is something else. It's the actions of the Prophet, actions outside the jurisdiction of the wajibat and the muharramat now. These are the noble ethical traits. That's why the Prophet was sent, إِنِّي بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I've been sent to complete the noble ethical traits. The Holy Prophet has come to manifest the Muhammadan soul throughout mankind through his actions. What are the noble ethical traits? Now these are difficult now. Most of us fail. Someone's done you wrong, but you forgive. Someone suppressed you financially, then another day asks you for some money. You donate. Family ties have been broken. It's their fault, but you amend family ties. It's all about breaking ego, eliminating the ego. These are difficult. Now you may ask, but there are many believers, not Muslims, non-believers, who do these things. So will they go to heaven or that kind of thing? Because they do the noble traits. The answer may be this, I don't know, but sometimes you forgive for Allah's sake. Sometimes you forgive for humanity's sake, on humanitarian grounds. Both are good, however. Those who act humanitarianly, their soul won't elevate. They won't spiritually. Because it was done Allah-lessly, or God-lessly, assuming they were non-believers. Christians, if they have it, they share the same ruling as Muslims. They believe in God. But non-believers, there may be non-believers who may forgive it very well, donate. It wasn't done Allah fully. There was no Allah in the picture. Since there was no Allah in the picture, it's good action, they'll be rewarded for it, but there's no elevation of the soul. Elevation of the soul is a function of one's godliness. That's why we have to do the Tariqah. After mastering the Shariah, we shouldn't segregate ourselves from the Shariah. It's important. And then by mastering the Shariah, that godliness is built to a certain degree, then it facilitates our execution of those noble ethical traits. Also, like the Christians in Islam, we believe in forgiveness. Absolute forgiveness in one-to-one relationships. We believe in turning the other cheek. We believe in giving the other tunic. If someone does you wrong, Islam has no limit in forgiveness. See how much you can go. They're doing you wrong, you forgive. They swear, you forgive. They hit you, assuming that you can hit back, you forgive though. Because if you can't hit back, there's no value in. If someone holds a gun to your head and you say, I forgive you, that doesn't make sense. Islam also accepts absolute forgiveness in one-to-one relationships for Allah's sake. Yes, when it comes to a community, you can't, and that's what we saw in those one-to-ones. We have it in the seerah, the conduct of the Ahlul Bayt. We see it many times. They swore, they hid, they did everything to the imams, but the imam loved them. They would swear, but their